All right, so let's get this party started. So my name is Diana Fulshron. I am the Director of Community Impact with the Community Foundation, and today we're going to be talking about the FY23 Strategic Grants Program. For those of you who are also interested in our Impact Grant Program, that training will be on August 10th. So as we go through this training presentation, we are going to ask you to stay on mute, but if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. We'll also be monitoring the chat, so if that's easier for you, that's great. And if you have any difficulties with technical difficulties during the presentation, you can contact Mark, and his email address is there, or you can call the office and you'll be connected to him. But otherwise, welcome. And we have some changes this year, so I'm hoping that you guys will ask questions as needed. So for today, we're going to go over a couple of different things. We're going to cover some of the basic outline of general eligibility for the strategic grant funding. We're going to talk about the funding priorities, and this is the new part. There's an overlay this year. So we're going to have preferences and focuses within each of those funding priorities, which we'll go over later. Then we're going to talk about some of the expectations we have for the grant itself, for the application itself, and then we're going to go into a little bit more detail about the financial information that we need organizations to include within the application. We'll be providing some post-submission details of what to expect if you do get granted an award. And then at the very end, for those of you who may be new or just need a refresher, we'll have a short piece on how you use Foundant, our online system, and what you have to do to create access for that. So any questions right now? All right. So we'll keep going. So first, for those of you who may be new to the Community Foundation, our strategic grants process, we are a private or a public nonprofit, and we work with donors to create funds and connect them with causes that are important to them, and then we provide scholarships and grants through those funds. And so we're specifically going to be talking about how our strategic grant process and how you access funds through the funds that support those causes. To be eligible for a strategic grant, you have to be providing services that are related to our 2019 strategic initiatives, and that and there's a preference for the human needs assessment update overlay, and we'll be getting into more information on that if that sounds, if that makes no sense to you right now. Additionally, the services have to be focused on Frederick County and provide direct measurable benefits to Frederick County residents. So you don't have to be located, as an organization, you don't have to be located in Frederick County, but we only fund services that impact Frederick County. The organizations that are eligible to apply are 501c3s in good standing, civic organizations working on charitable project, religious organization doing non-sectarian project, and quasi-governmental or governmental agency for a project that isn't funded by tax dollars. I do want to talk a little bit more about the eligibility for 501c3s because these organizations have to jump through a few more hoops. So there are 3 areas of compliance that you have to be in, 3 areas where you have to be in compliance. We will be checking your status with the IRS. So if you filed your 990 on time, then you will continue to be eligible as a 501c3 under IRS guidelines. The state of Maryland also has 2 different divisions that help regulate nonprofits in Maryland. One of those is the Maryland Secretary of State's Charitable Division. As a nonprofit organization, you have to be registered and you have to submit your annual report to the Secretary of State. And there's also the Department of Assessment and Taxation, and specifically the Personal Property Tax Division. And this particular division is where you incorporated as an organization in the state of Maryland, and you have to stay current with them by filing your annual reports and personal property tax returns. And so we check your due diligence in a couple of different ways. You as an organization are responsible for certifying your compliance in the application. So you will have to check, yes, I'm in compliance with these 2 regulations. And so that is something that we will be taking to heart this year. We do check your status with each of these things, and the email, or the website addresses are right there for you. And I'm going to put them in the chat if you want some easy access. So that one is the charitable division with the Secretary of State. And these will take you directly to the databases that we search for your compliance. So a couple of things to note about these filings is that since the onset of COVID, the state of Maryland has been really behind on processing the filings that they have. So even if you think you're in compliance, you should really check these out. Like, you can do that now. I will not be offended if you need to, go on your computer to check these out. So, because if you check your status now, you still have time to harass the state of Maryland and make sure that your records match their records and all the filings have been complete. This year, we're not going to be able to go back to organizations that come out as not in compliance, because we have limited staff and there's a lot of you. And so we're really relying on you as an organization to be proactive in making sure these statuses are in compliance. If you're not in compliance, you will not be considered for grant funding. So this is something, so we will check. The application closes on August 15th, and we'll be checking on August 15th and August 16th and the 17th to make sure everyone's in compliance. And if you come up with either of these places, so the Secretary of State will tell you that you're out of compliance, and the Department of Assessment will tell you that you're not in good standing. And so if we see either of those things, your application will not go forward for consideration. So any questions so far? Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit more specific about our strategic grants. These grants are specific to program operating costs for the 2019 Strategic Initiative funding priorities. And we're going to, with the overlay, and we're going to get to those again. There's going to be at least $579,000 available in funding. This is money that while there's no cap on the amount that is requested, this is money that's going to be shared. So I would not recommend asking for all $579,000. You are highly unlikely to get funded at that amount. Our top funding grants for these for this pot of money is typically around $60,000 or $70,000, but it's a spread between the highest grant amount, and I think the lowest grant we've ever had in here is $5,000. But we do try and look at if that $5,000 will be impactful for the project that you're requesting. We will provide partial funding, but we won't give you a grant that won't actually help you run the program. And you also are allowed to submit multiple applications. So you're not limited to that. And then in that regard, and if you want to talk to me about how, if you're going to submit multiple applications, like what are some of the best practices for that, I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline. And then the website that you're going to want to go to is frederickcountygives.org on our grants page, and it'll provide you a link to our online grants management system where you will be applying. All right, so some other basics. The application period is going to be July 15th through August 15th of this year, of the summer. You will receive a award notification in late October. Actually, that should be, so actually that's beginning of late September, beginning of October. The spending period is going to start November 5th or November 1st of this year, and will go through March 31st of 2024. So it's a larger spending period, and you can spend the funds at any point in time during that grant period. So if you use it for a year, if you spend it all in 6 months, that is entirely up to you. That's just, you have to be able to spend the money within those parameters. And then we also have some program and fiscal report deadlines. We have an interim report that will happen around July. For the last 2 years, we've been doing site visits in lieu of written reports. And that seems to be going well for the strategic funding partners that or the strategic grantees that we have. And so we may continue that, but it will happen in the July timeframe. The final report will be due 30 days after the end of the spending period. So you'll have some time to get ready and to look at that. Specifically for the final report, that's when you're going to have to provide us some fiscal information about how you spent the money. And we will get on to that. So now let's talk about the strategic initiatives and what this actually means. So the Community Foundation commissioned a human needs assessment in 2018 to kind of develop a sense of what are the greatest community needs at that time in 2018, and gives you information about where to find the full report. And this is that 2018 human needs assessment followed our 2011 human needs assessment. And we thought we were going to, and you can see from that human needs assessment, the strategic initiatives were created. So there's a whole big report, and our board of directors looked at that report and said, of those issues that had bubbled to the top, we want our focuses to be supporting families with children, preparing for a growing aging population, and supporting individuals impacted by substance use disorder. So in order to be qualified for a strategic grant, you have to have a program that fits in one of these 3 buckets as a strategic initiative. We had a lot of expectations in 2019. We were really excited about having these strategic funding priorities, and we thought we were going to be able to carry those through for the next 5-8 years. Then COVID happened, and we knew that we needed to provide an update of our strategic initiatives, because the way quantifiable hard data happens, we knew we weren't going to get good data from our sources to be able to analyze that for a few more years. So over this year, we had a consultant conduct key informant interviews to see what may need to be updated within our human needs assessment and our strategic initiatives. And so the top 3 issues that were elevated during this process were mental health, affordable housing, and disparities in delivery of services. So talking about disparities related to disenfranchised communities, BIPOC populations, LGBTQ, disability, community, those sorts of issues. And so for our FY23 strategic grant process, there will be a preference within those 3 buckets for programs that address mental health, affordable housing, disparities in delivery of services. So this is us responding as nimbly as we can as the needs in the community are developing. Whether or not this is going to be how our strategic grant looks like next year is still up in the air. So this is what we're doing right now. After the strategic grant process, the Community Foundation is going to be doing a larger strategic planning process for the organization, and we will either proceed with the strategic grant process as is this year, or we'll make some changes, but we'll definitely keep you informed as things go. So let's look a little bit about, so what's the impact of creating these overlays over on top of the strategic initiative areas. So really there's going to be a 2-part review process. So in our first step, we're going to review and award programs that in those 3 buckets that are addressing mental health, affordable housing, and/or disparities in service. And so if there's money available after that step 1 review has happened, we will look at the other programs that are available in those 3 buckets. So the overlay means a preference. So those applications will be considered first. If you're addressing mental health, affordable housing, or disparities in service. So that's a big change. Any questions so far? So, and of course, you're welcome to.
Excuse me, Diane.
Yes.
Those 3 buckets then taking preference of the previous 3?
No. So here, let's go to the next one. So let's talk a little bit about an example. So you still have to be providing a program that addresses, that supports people impacted by substance use disorder. You have to, or preparing for an aging population, or supporting families with children. So you still have those three buckets of the things that you can do from the 2019 strategic initiatives. Within those buckets, there'll be preferences if you are addressing targeted, if you are addressing mental health, affordable housing, or and/or disparities in service. So for example, like if there's a maternal health program that's providing targeted services to limited English proficiency households, that particular program would apply under the Supporting Families with Children strategic initiative. They would, and then there are going to be overlay questions. So there's going to be a place where you can select if you're supporting families with children, supporting people impacted by substance use disorder, preparing for growing aging population. And then there will be additional questions about if that program addresses mental health, affordable housing, or disparities in service. So that maternal health program is going to apply under the strategic initiative of supporting families with children. And then they're going to answer overlays, or they could answer overlays related to mental health and disparities in service. So for that particular program, they may be doing both mental health and disparities in services, but they are under the umbrella of supporting families with children. So the three buckets are still those three strategic initiative areas: supporting families with children, supporting people impacted by substance use disorder, and preparing for a growing aging population. It's just within each of those buckets, there's going to be preferences for programs that deal with mental health, affordable housing, or disparities in service. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay. And Maria Dennis, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, do you have a list of populations that you consider, receiving disparate services?
So we don't have a specific list, is the short answer. But generally, when you're looking at the demographics in Maryland and some of the social determinants that are out there and what impacts health outcomes, education outcomes, housing outcomes, work outcomes, we are typically talking about BIPOC communities, limited English proficiency communities, outlying rural areas in Frederick happen to be a place specific to Frederick that is kind of disenfranchised and out of the loop. We're talking about LGBTQ communities, and we're talking about folks within the disability community. So does that help then, Maria?
That does, thank you.
Okay. That also isn't to say that if you feel that you are serving a population that we haven't considered or is not in that list, that doesn't mean you shouldn't tell us about it. And I'll say it again later in the presentation. You guys are the experts, and we are looking to you to tell us about the creative and impactful and innovative things that you're doing to help the people in our community. Depending on what the needs of the community is that you serve, it may not be something that we have considered, but we still want to know that. Does that make sense? Okay. So any other questions at this point? Okay. So next piece. So let's talk about specifically what we mean in those three big buckets. So supporting families with children is one of the first big buckets. So we're specifically looking for programs that are continuing or increasing opportunities for all families for children to thrive, and for programs that are continuing or increasing stability and opportunities for households that are below the ALICE threshold. And if you don't know what the ALICE threshold is and would like more information, The United Way has some great information about that, but we're also happy to answer questions about it at the Community Foundation's office. But United Way is the organization in town that, excuse me, that commissioned that particular study to be completed in Frederick County. And then for preparing for a growing aging population, we want your programs to either continue or increase the ability for seniors to age in place in the most optimal and appropriate environment. That could be keeping them in their home. It could be moving them to a facility that better serves their needs, or a better housing option that better serves their needs. And we're also looking for programs that continue or increase access to information and resources on aging for current seniors, rising seniors, and their caregivers. So this is really about education in the community and making sure the populations that are affected by aging issues have the information they need to make informed decisions. And the last piece is supporting individuals infected by substance use disorder. We're looking to continue or increase access to timely and qualified treatment and recovery options. We're looking to continue or increase provision of substance use related education and prevention programs. So again, this is education stuff, support, and we're looking to continue or increase capacity for collecting and analyzing data, because we know that it was identified in 2018 as a place where that could be improved within the community, and having access to data like that. So specifically, let's look at what we mean by continue or increase. So continue is you're keeping the program as is. This is the level of services that we provided in the past, and we're going to continue those essential services. And we are seeking funding to help support that current level of service. That is a perfectly acceptable application for us. It doesn't have to be new and shiny and bigger. However, we're happy to also support projects that are increasing the services available. So you're either increasing your existing services, so you're wanting to expand offices, expand the number of staff, expand the clientele that you're reaching. So you just want more of what you're already doing. We are also happy to support new programs. So this isn't something that exists in the community yet. This isn't something that exists for your particular organization yet, and you'd like to launch a new program. So any of those three options are perfectly acceptable and welcome within our strategic grants process. And then within your strategic grant, okay, and actually let's go back a minute. So any questions here? We're going to pause for a second.
And I have one question, particularly under the area of supporting families with children.
Yes.
Can the focus be primarily on the children in support of the family, or are you looking for more programs that are more targeted at the adults within the family?
Sure. So I will tell you the programs that have received the largest grants are working with the family unit as a whole. So they have programs that are addressing both issues for the adults and then supporting the kids where they're at. So so there are definitely some programs that we have supported through our grants, through our strategic grants, that have more of the focus on the kids or more of the focus on the adults, but the most highly funded programs are ones that address kind of the multi-generational aspects of families.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions right now?
Diana, yes, I had a quick question.
Sure.
Talking about children, are you defining them as individuals under the age of 18 or just for clarification?
Yep, under 18.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question? No. Okay. And always shout it out if you remember it. It could be on a different slide. You're also welcome to send us questions later if you need to. All right, so let's keep going. So let's talk a little bit about the application expectations. So when you are going into the application, you're going to need to talk about outcomes. What's the long-term significant change that you're hoping to achieve by running this program? You're also going to need to talk about indicators. So those things that are changing that you can measure that indicate that you're making a difference now. Like what has changed since you started this, or since that client, or since you have started this program. You're going to need to talk about your activities. So what are you going to do? Are you holding training sessions? Are you doing system navigation? Are you doing whatever the actual activities or the widgets of the program are the things that you're going to need to be able to tell us about. And then you're also going to have to talk about evaluation. So how are you going to measure it? Are you using pre and post surveys? Are you collecting income information at the start and the end of the program? Are you doing more reviews by case management? And how well are you creating goals with the clients, and are they meeting the goals that they have set out? Those sorts of things. So you're going to have to talk about how that information is collected within the program. So, and then we're also going to have the overlay questions. So there are 3 separate questions. So if applicable, please describe how this project addresses affordable housing. If applicable, please describe how this project addresses mental health needs. And if applicable, please describe how this project alleviates disparities in service. So these are optional questions in the application. Again, you do not have to answer them. And then you're also welcome to answer all the questions that apply. So this could be a mental health program that focuses on a marginalized or disenfranchised community. This could be an affordable housing program that also has mental health built into it. So you can answer 0 to 3 of these questions, but again, they are optional. One of the things to note, though, if you're doing something in these overlay areas, we want you to include that in the information about what you're measuring as the impact of your program. So do you have an indicator? Is it included in the measurements of how, is it included in the information you're collecting about the impact of the clients? And one of the things you may notice here is that, again, these questions about the overlay or the overlays or the preferences are pretty big. They're pretty vague, and we're not going to give you any additional guidance. Of course, we'll answer questions and help you flesh it out if you need to, but we don't have a set thing of what we want to see in affordable housing, what impacts we want to see. We don't have set outcomes that we want to see for mental health. We don't have set outcomes about disparities in services. These are things that we want you to tell us about. So what are you doing and what are your goals around these particular issues? Part of that is because we're still developing what we want as a community foundation to support. And this is actually great information for us to have from organizations that are doing this work in the community. What are you doing to address these needs? So we have some ideas, but we need, you're the experts. You guys are the ones doing the programs that are creating the impact. So we'd love to hear what you're doing. So questions about the overlay, questions on the application. We'll keep going then. And so let's talk about those first 4 pieces. So what the application expectations are. So that the big outcome, for example, if you're doing a report preparing for a growing aging population, your outcome is all seniors are fully engaged in community members. Again, this is the think big moment. Like, what is the ultimate impact that you want your program to be addressing? And so the indicators are things that you can measure within the year that you're going to be implementing this program so that you can show change. And so for this particular program, they're saying that 50% of seniors served by a program report decreased feelings of social isolation, and 50% of seniors served by a program report increasing number of activities outside of their home. And the way the activities of the program that they're going to do to support that outcome and achieve those indicators is that they're going to provide door-to-door transportation to 100 seniors in rural communities on a weekly basis, which is a big program, but we're dreaming. And for the evaluation piece of it, they're going to track the number of rides that each senior received, as well as feelings of social isolation activity level through pre and post testing. So this is a summary. As far as I know, this particular program exists sort of throughout the community. Not necessarily, so this is a pretend program. This isn't a specific program in Frederick County. But this gives you an example of the sorts of things that we're asking for. I will also note that within the application, we have very large text limits for each of the questions, because we want you to have the freedom to address things as you need to, but you don't need to use all that room. So for these questions in particular, your outcome could be a single sentence as is. So your indicators could be 2 lines with the percentages in it, and that's totally fine. You don't need to, and that applies to the overlay, the questions, that applies to your program description. It doesn't need to take up all 10,000 characters within the application. So edit it as you need to. Please feel free to explain your program in full, but you don't need to take up all that space. Next slide. So now we're going to dive a little bit into the financial information that we're going to be requiring on the application, just so we can answer those questions. But before we move on to that, are there any further questions about the program descriptions in the grant, the descriptive application questions? No? Okay, great. So the required financial information, we're going to need information on your project or program budget. So what are you going to be spending our grant funding on? For those organizations that have a single purpose, like there's only one thing that you do and you're seeking dollars to support general operating funds for that one thing that you do, it may be an organizational budget instead of a project or program budget. So, but in addition to this kind of tells, so this project or program budget tells us how you're going to spend the money that we give you. So what are you going to do with the grant dollars? We're also looking for, so the project and program budget is looking forward. So what are you going to do with the money? We're also looking to get information from you as regarding your organization as a whole. There are 3 different levels of this that we'll get into. But so the organization as a whole information is really looking back. So what have your dollars been doing, and how have they been doing looking back at your past fiscal years? Again, we're going a little bit more into the project or program budget. We don't have a required format, but we do have information that we want you. So use whatever format works for your organization. It doesn't need to be, we have a template as an example that's available on the application, but you don't need to use our words, the way we divide things up. But we do need to know all the income that's coming in, if you have committed versus pending dollars to support the program. And we also need to know what all of your expenditures or what all of your costs are for the program. And we need to know them by line item, like salary versus utilities versus rent versus program materials. And if you're asking for support for a specific purchase within the application, like computers, a bus, whatever that quote, we would need a quote from a vendor about how much that is. So we know that you're not just pulling the information out of nowhere. And a popular question related to that is if you're buying something from Amazon, you're welcome to use that. But we're really, for vendor quotes, we're really looking for things that are expensive for the program. So really anything over the threshold of about $5,000. If it's going to cost more than that, we would want a vendor quote for that. There are some things that we won't pay for. So if you're an organization that has multiple programs and you apply for supporting families with children, you can't use your supporting families with children grant to support your food pantry program. So it's different things. There's non-cash expenses like depreciation. We won't pay for that. It's good. So for your program budget, it may be something, there may be a line item in there about that, but our dollars can't be used to offset those costs. And your budget is actually a really useful tool within our application to help you to help tell the story of the program. So you can't include too much information on your budget for our particular grant scheme. And again, there are a few pieces of detail that will help us evaluate your program. It's really, really helpful for you to put the name of your organization on however you need to on the document that you upload to our system. Because when the grants committee members click on your project budget, it comes up as a separate thing. It's not embedded in the program. So for grants committee members who are looking at 10, 20, 30 applications, it's really helpful if the name of your program and the name of your organization is on your individual pieces, so it doesn't just blend in with everything else. Again, it would also be helpful to have the start and end dates. If you know that you're going to use this funding within the first 6 months, then your start and end dates would be for those 6 months. If you're going to use the dollars throughout the course of the funding or over the course of the spending period, then definitely use start and end dates that correspond with that. So again, this is up to you and your organization and how you're going to use the money. And again, you're going to see income, but again, this is an example. You don't have to use our format, but we definitely need those particular pieces of information at the top. Additionally, we're going to need to see your expenses. And then for things like staff time, we want to know how much staff time is being allocated and what the range of the per hour or total amount of money that you're going to be spending on staff for this. And this is just good information for us to have, especially if you are going to be asking for staff funding. We need to know how much money would be impactful towards that staff. So if you pay your case managers, $60,000 a year, we're not going to give you $10,000 for that staff member, because that would be inadequate to support the staffing that you have if you're looking to fund that particular position. However, if you're looking to support, a part-time case manager on an as-needed basis, that we need to know how many hours and how much you're going to pay them, because that could be an impactful, $10,000 could be impactful for that particular staff position. Does that make sense? Okay. So next piece, we'd like to know the net project income or deficit. Obviously, if we see a deficit within your program budget, we're going to want to know how you're going to execute the program, especially if the deficit is significant. If you have a program that is going to be partially supported by outside funding and partially supported by general operating funds from your organization, you can either explain that here if it's a deficit, or you can add that operational dollars within your income source. So it's just, money from work. And if they're on the other side of that, if you have a positive number, it's a couple of bucks, couple $100, that's not something that we're going to look at. But if you're projecting a net income of $5,000, $10,000 or higher, we're going to kind of wonder why you're asking for money from us. And there could be good explanations, but would be your place to explain. Like, this is why we're projecting this much income coming in, and this is how this income is going to be used. Does that make sense?
Diana, I think Mandy has a question in the chat.
Let me go to the chat. So Mandy, good question. So if you, specifically around staff, if you are going to be asking for money from us and our money is going to be this, the bulk of the dollars that are going to support that staff person, then $10,000 would not be impactful towards $60,000. But if you have a staff member and you want to support part of their salary through the community foundation, and you're okay with receiving $10,000 to support that staff, then that's something that you can indicate in your application. Does that make sense? Okay, I see you nodding. Yeah. And again, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So what's next? All right. So let's talk about that organizational financial information. So, and this is really based on classifications of levels of organization based on that Secretary of State division. So, and the way they categorize their charitable organizations. So if you're an organization that receives less than $300,000 in annual charitable contributions, we have a financial form that the Community Foundation has developed that you can use to give us that particular information. And specifically, we'll be looking for your last completed fiscal year, and we're going to ask for assets and liabilities and that sort of information on that particular form. So if you're an organization that has received more than $300,000, but less than $750 in annual charitable contributions, and this includes grants from state or federal funding, actually state, or private foundations in addition to individual donors giving you money. So it's any money that's coming in to support your charitable purposes. Then we will ask for an independent financial review. And this is where an outside CPA comes in, looks at your books and says, we think this represents a fair picture of how the money was spent and how the money was categorized during the course of this past fiscal year. So, but the key here is that you have someone from the outside of your organization, including board members, who are able to do this independent financial review. So, and it can look a bunch of different ways, but it needs to be someone from the outside looking at your books. For organizations that receive more than $750,000 in annual charitable contributions, we require a financial audit. And this is an outside CPA firm coming in and taking a very deep dive into your books, making sure you're following general accounting principles, making sure you're in compliance with any grant regulations from the grant dollars that you receive. It can be pretty intensive and can take a while. Again, but this will be for your last completed fiscal year, depending on what your fiscal year is. So again, project budget is looking forward, organizational information is looking backwards. So how did you spend your money and how do you want to spend your money? Does that make sense? Okay. And so let's talk about what happens after the award process. So if you're awarded a grant, we're going to be sending email notifications to the primary email on file with your organization in Foundant. So if you look into Foundant and you're going to want to make sure that you have updated contact information within your organization's profile for what you're doing, because those emails are going to go to the primary contact. The approved grant amount that you will be receiving will be sent during the first or second month of the program period. And so end of November, beginning of December, you should be receiving a check for the entire grant amount. There are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's all going to come to you at the beginning of the program. So you have the cash to actually do the program. And then the grantee will be required, and we were just talking about the program and fiscal information that we need for the application. For the final report, you are going to have to include a profit and loss statement for the program and the statement of financial position for your organization. Let us know if you have questions about what those actually are. At this particular time, we're not going to require proof of payment or proof of receipt at the time of reporting. So, but please do keep receipts and keep the records of how you spent the money, because we reserve the right to request proof of expenditures up to 6 months after the program has ended. So we'll look through final reports, and if we have questions, we may ask for additional information or additional documentation. Also, the grantee will be responsible for returning any unused funds at the end of the program period. So before the end of the program period, if it looks like you need an extension, we know that COVID has interrupted a lot of your service models. Please contact us at least 3 months before the end of the application period or the end of the spending period, so we can possibly request a variance or do something else to make sure the money is spent and then is accounted for and you don't have to send us any money back. We don't want your money back. We want the money out there in the community making impact. So let's work together to make sure you don't have to send us anything. So any questions about that if you receive a grant? Okay, so I'm going to pause here for questions. Also, and I'm sorry, this isn't on the last slide. If your organization is declined for this particular project, please do reach out to us if you have questions about your application and why it was denied. So we'd love to have that conversation with you. Because there are so many applicants, we don't proactively go out and contact each of you about why the application was denied, but I'm more than happy to have that conversation with you after the program period or after the application notifications have been sent out. So if you have any questions about for on the application about the purpose of the project, about its impact on Frederick County, program design, budget information, overlays, strategic initiative areas, you're going to want to call me. The email there is there. My email is there. That's the best way to reach me, just because I'm in and out of the office so much. And then we have Mark Kamey, who is our "What button do I push now?" system guru for how you access the application. So Mark, if you want to wave your hand so people can see you, he will be the one to help you use our online grant system, add in interchanging users. You want to update your profile information, you're having trouble accessing the application that you already started, that would be your guy. So after this, we're going to take some questions if there are any at this particular time. And then for those of you who would like a refresher on our information or using our online grant system and accessing the application, you're welcome to stay. For those of you who have got this down, you're welcome to leave. You don't have to hang out with us. So I'm going to pause now for some more questions. Any other questions out there? Okay, so I must have answered them all already. The application will be available starting July 15th. Once you have a chance to actually look at the application and look at how the questions are structured, please feel free to contact us and ask any further questions that you may have. We're happy to help you work on that. I will make note that I'm going to be out of the office from July 11th through July 15th. So any questions next week should be directed towards Mark, and he will troubleshoot as best as possible.
Fabulous, thank you.
You're welcome. And then I see a question, or Veronica has raised her hand. Do you want to jump in?
Hi, yes, thanks, Diana. Thank you for the presentation as well. And you may have said already, are the slides going to be made available or emailed?
Yeah, so we haven't actually said, but that's a great question. Both the slides and the recording of this particular training is going to be made available later. We will either email the information out, or we will have it available to download from our website. So we're still working.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions at this time?
Diana, there's a question from Jasmine. She wanted to know, can you please return to the two-step process review slide?
Sure. Hold on. Pardon me while I scroll. Okay, so here we are. So Jasmine, did you have questions about this, or did you just want to see it again?
Just needed to see it again to understand step 2.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Lori has a question in the chat. Do you ever anticipate requiring nonprofit organizations to provide their UEI, unique identity, entity identification number now required for federal grant assistance?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
I don't anticipate that ever. So one less thing that you have to worry about for us. I think that's a barrier for a lot of organizations. That would be a bit too much, because if anyone has ever tried to work with the DUN system, it can be a bit much. Yeah, exactly, Lori. Thank goodness. No, we won't do that to you.
Yeah, right.
Thank
you.
Okay, any other questions at this point? Okay, well then we are going to go on to the accessing the application portion. So for those of you who want to leave now, you're welcome to do that. For those of you who want to stay, hang on a minute while I get my the windows open that I need to in online. So it's everyone here who wants to be here. I'm going to stop sharing that particular piece and we're going to go on. So I'm gonna have to share some more. I'm sorry, I can't see all of your faces. We're gonna go to, so we're gonna go to that. So what are you guys seeing right now? I think you're still seeing my application, yeah? Or my slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's
Yeah.
not what I want to show you.
That wasn't.
I think,
We could see your webpage.
oh, we could? Okay, so hold on, let me just go
Yeah.
ahead and close the presentation so I don't make myself confused. So can you see the webpage now?
Yes.
Okay, so if you were to
Well,
go on to frederickcountygates.org, yeah,
Back up 1 second. Now it's a Word document with
okay, that's not
the web
what I
links.
want to show you. All right, let me try this one more time.
We've all been there. Take your time.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
the consideration.
Yep.
So,
We were there. We could see your webpage that said about
Okay,
our
can you
grant
see it now?
making. Yes.
Back.
okay, cool. All right. So, so when you log in, when you take that website journey, when you type in frederickcountygives.org/grants, it's going to take you to this page. And it's at the top of the page, it's going to provide you some information about some of our current applications that are open right now or going to open. So the strategic grants are going to be on top right now because that's what we're promoting most. If you scroll ignore everything else and scroll all the way to the bottom, you're going to see two buttons, preview all available grant opportunities here and accessing your organization's account here. So when you click on this, what you're going to see is a summary of what's available and how you can apply those fundings. These are just basic information about who's eligible and what the money is for. And once July 15th hits, you're going to be able to see the strategic grant summary page. There are two ways to create an application. You can either hit where's the apply button? Actually, no, I'm sorry. Normally there would be an apply button here in the gray bar that you would be able to hit apply. Or you can hit this blue button up here, log on, create an account to apply. If you hit the apply button here, like let's say you've started an application and you want to come back to your application. If you hit the apply button here on the actual funded, on the summary itself, it will create a second application. So that is an important thing to note. So you will then have created a second strategic grant application, and you will probably be very confused about how you can see the applications that you have, and why your information is now blank. If you click this blue button up here, that will take you to the login page. So the other thing you can do if you want to avoid possibly duplicating things, you can go back to this grants page and it'll have here grantees access your organization's account here. And even if you don't have an account yet, if you click on that, you're going to get to your login page. And so this is where our grants committee members sign in. This is where our staff signs in. This is where new organizations sign in. This is where existing organizations sign in. So if you already have an account set up, you type in email address and password here and just hit log on. If you're a new organization, you're going to hit the create new account button here, and it'll take you through all the steps of creating an account on Founded. One thing you're definitely going to need is your EIN number that's on your IRS determination letter. So the letter that you have from the IRS that says you are in fact a nonprofit, they're going to give you an EIN number, and you need that to be able to create your account. If you run into any issues with all of this, you've forgotten your password, you're not sure what email you use, it looks like there's another organization that has an existing EIN number. That's especially relevant if there are any fiscal sponsorships going on. Then Mark is the one you're going to want to call to help straighten that out. And then if you forgot your, however, if you've forgotten your password, all you have to do is click on forget your password, and it'll walk you through the steps of redoing your password. The one time for your password that you're going to want to talk to Mark is if you've locked yourself out. So if you keep trying to guess your password, it will lock you out after 15 tries. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you don't know, if you can't remember it after 5 tries, just hit forgot your password. And then, so I'm going to log in, and when I log in, you're going to see things that you won't see because I am an administrator with the program. Hold on. So speaking of forgetting your password. Oh, it helps if you type your email address correctly. Okay, so I don't want to know that information now. I'm looking at folks. So Veronica, I know the United Way has an existing account, but they haven't applied to anything in a while. Would it be okay if I brought up the United Way's, and I see you nodding, so I'm going to go ahead. So
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
So we are going to search for United Way. And again, you guys won't have access to any of this information. So and so we're going to proxy in, I'm going to proxy in as Veronica. And so you're going to see what she sees. So this is one of the landing pages for organizations. And again, you're going to have the summaries of all that is available. Again, if you hit apply on the summaries after you initially created an application, it's going to create a second application. It's really important to know. If you want to see your existing stuff, then you can go to your dashboard, and it's going to tell you if you have any active applications. So if you have an existing application, click home and then click on the active request button, and then you'll be able to edit the existing application. If you have any information that you need to update for your organization, you've moved, changed staff, any of that stuff, you can edit the organization. Or if you as a profile person have changed things within your title has changed, your email address has changed, any of those things, you can edit your user profile from there. Okay. And there's a difference between active requests. So let's say this is where you edit applications. If you receive a grant, we're going to have grant agreement that you're going to need to sign and some data that we're collecting, all of that. And then when you submit your final report, all of that stuff is going to show up under your active requests tab. Okay. If you have any if you have any grants from us that have been closed, so you've submitted the final report, that particular grant period is over, it's going to be under your historical requests. And again, you know, it's been a while for United Way. I think actually the last time you applied for a grant was before we were doing the system. So you don't have any historical requests and you don't have any current active requests, but for those organizations that do have past grants, it's going to be under historical requests. If you have active requests, it's going to be under active requests. So those active requests are anything that you are currently working on that you haven't submitted your final report for. So does that all make sense? Okay. So this was the down and dirty, quick overview. Do you have any questions about this right now?
How long do the historical requests stay there?
You know, that's a really good question. As far as I know, we never take them off, like they never retire. So we would physically have to go in and delete that information. If you can't see the entire request history, or you think you might be missing some things, we may need to play with a setting on our end about what people can see within their existing profiles.
I
Does
think
that make
I
sense? So
did,
there,
like
so
you
as
said.
staff, yeah, as new staff enters or as new staff changes, the organization can set up those, can request to set up those profiles in a couple of different ways. And some of those profiles will have access to historical information and some of those profiles won't. They'll just be able to see what they are personally responsible for. But we started using this grant system. I think the first grants in here are from FY12 or FY13, somewhere in that range. So if you submitted applications to the Community Foundation prior to that, it's not going to be in the system. And if you receive applications from any of our donor advised funds, those are also not going to be in the system because they're not a competitive grant. The only information you're going to see on here is if you've received an award through one of our competitive grant programs.
Diana, is the reason I'm not, my account here or my profile is not showing historical requests because I'm a new employee?
You know, let's look. So Veronica, I'm sorry, I'm totally using you as a guinea pig here. I'm going to stop parsing and use you. And we're
I
gonna look.
bet if we looked under Ken.
Yeah, that is possible. But I'm sure Ken would want you to have.
Yeah, maybe you can whip that up on the back end real quick because.
Yeah. So we're going to edit you here.
Diana, I added her to having historical requests.
Okay, so cool.
Thanks,
So,
Mark.
You might have to log out and log back in so she can see it. You're welcome, Veronica.
see, that's why he's the helper, because it takes me forever.
Yes, and this is nice that you used me as a guinea pig because I feel like I got, you know, some added assistance. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's see. Okay, so let me log out. So, and it is entirely possible that things haven't been submitted by United Way. Come on. Sorry, everyone. You can tell. Oh, so now I've been locked out. So I'm sorry, Veronica, I cannot help you right now.
This is the funniest. But no problem.
Things that you should not do. And oh, my cap locks was on. Never mind. So that was my own fault. Okay. So all the things you should not do when using our found-in system. But Veronica, if you after this is done, I will have Mark reset me, and and we can take a look to see if there are in fact any United Way applications that have been submitted previously.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for the excellent demo because honestly, I do the same thing you do. I have my caps on, or I mess up a password with an exclamation point where it should have been a $sign. So
yeah,
I can relate.
If you get that notice, call Mark.
Yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, I will say that for part of the application period, Mark is going to be on vacation. The nerve of some people leaving the office, but so if he is not available, you can contact me. And Martin, who is also on the line, is one of the community impact associates. He only works with our department part-time, but he's also really cognizant of the foundant. So we may direct you to him because he may be more available than I am. Martin, I don't know if you want to wave your hand. And he is, however, working remotely from Scotland, so please don't call the office for him. You can use our email addresses and we'll make sure it gets to him. And then Sonia, I'm not sure if you're still on. If you want to, Sonia is also Community Associate Impact. She works in the office. She focuses mainly on our scholarship programs, but she may be able to help direct your question in the right place if Mark, Martin, or I are not available. So, but we are right. We're a little bit over our timeline. And so if there are no more questions, we will let you know how to access these slides and the recording when we have that available. And it's been great seeing everyone. So Thanks so much, and we look forward to reading your applications. So have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.